God story. I wanted to let you know a little bit about how I came to know the Lord. I was 33 years old, and my life was pretty much in shambles. My mother was dying. I had sinned quite a bit. I was getting divorced. I had switched jobs to a new community. And it was just kind of really hard. So, the night before my mother died, I had actually seen, I'm just going to call them angels, in the sky, and I knew she was going to die, and we'd been with her quite a bit, and she wasn't letting go, and she had brain cancer at the end, and it would have been better for her not to suffer anymore. So I knew that night that she was going to die, and so I purposely didn't go visit her so she could just let go and not feel like she had to hang on. And ironically enough, it happened to my dad, too, in a different place. He had told me later that he, too, had seen angels, and he knew she was going to die, too. No coincidence. So anyways, after she had passed, the next day, I had like a really bad sinus infection, and we're sitting there and we're going through photos and all that stuff, getting her obituary ready, and I just had such bad headaches and everything, and my husband and I were separated, and he called and was upset at me, and it was the day we were actually supposed to get divorced, and was yelling at me right after my mom died. And I kind of had one of those moments where I broke down. I remember I was in a bedroom, and I just said, "Okay, Lord, I give up." And I only knew about doing this because I'd gone to kind of a mom's weekend, and some of the gals there had talked about how they accepted the Lord when they were 15 and yada, yada, yada. And I was kind of like, what do you mean accepted the Lord? And they kind of talked about how they'd prayed a prayer and invited him into their life. And I was kind of like, I had to do that. When I was younger, I was Catholic, and we didn't go to church much, and I had communion, but I never went through confirmation. So I don't know, I didn't really know much about it. And, I pretty much didn't like going to church. I didn't like all of it. It was boring. And so I kind of remembered what my girlfriends had said about accepting the Lord. And so I just kind of prayed a simple prayer and said, God, please forgive me my sins. If you're really out there, please come into my life. And then I remember saying to myself, okay, now I have to act like a Christian. So, about 2 months had gone by, and then really weird stuff started to happen. And I'm just going to say, like, supernatural stuff. And I told you my mom had died. And actually in 6 months, my mom died, her sister died, and her sister died just a week later from cancer also. Her mother died, and her sister-in-law died. So we had 4 out of 5 people in my mom's family die. And my cousins and I were just cleaning out house after house, and it was just a horrible time amongst all this other turmoil in my life, and having young kids and everything, and trying to live on my own because I was getting divorced and stuff, and a new job, a lot of stress. So, like I said, all of a sudden, like 2 months later, all this weird stuff started happening. I literally could feel a presence near me on my left side all the time. Have you ever maybe back when we had the older type of TVs. Do you guys ever remember a TV being turned on? You kind of hear that high pitch. I could tell when this presence was with me, like, because of this high pitch. And I could just hear it, and I could feel it. I could feel how big the presence was and everything. And so that stayed with for a while, which kind of scared me. And then, like I said, all kind of other external things. And there was definitely, I would say, a fight from the dark side, because I'd also see things like, things would kind of light up. Okay, so I remember a sign that said, "You're coming home," which made me kind of think I was going to die. Then I would, when I went to buy my first Bible, because I was so freaked out, I figured, I need a Bible, I got to read this. And I knew I had to read Revelation, which really didn't make a lot of sense to me at the time, but I just knew something big was coming. So I remember going into Barnes & Noble to buy a Bible, and the whole path there was laden with just evil stuff, like literally like books that were just horrible. I don't know, just totally demonic stuff coming at me. It was really scary just to get a Bible, my first Bible. Needless to say, I go and I just get a Bible, and I ran out of there. And so then I wasn't really like knowing what was going on. All I knew is I started to realize, there's more to this life than just what I was living that I knew of. And so then I started to, listen to Christian radio stations and stuff like that. I didn't really know what to do, because at church they don't talk about these weird things happening. I even I called he wasn't even my ex-husband at the time. We were still separated. And I'm just like, God is alive. Like, he is alive, and there's stuff happening, and I don't know why. So this was like 2 months after I had accepted him, so there was a time lapse there. And at the time I had started dating a man. And so I was a teacher, and in my classroom then, so it's 2 months after I accepted him, I was on like my prep, and I had turned the radio on. And I hear like exactly, he said words that were for no one else but me. And I really couldn't tell if it was on the radio or if I was just hearing the Lord out loud. And maybe he used that as a medium so that I wouldn't totally freak out, even though I kind of did anyways. So he was talking to me through the radio as if he was a radio broadcaster. And then I knew it was him, and so I just asked out loud if I was going to marry this man, because he was kind of in the middle of all this stuff happening too. And he answered back that I was. And so now I'm not just crying about that. I realize I'm hearing like the Lord of the universe is interacting with me, and he's really alive. So I'm just crying, weeping. Now I'm scared. I actually ran into the other room thinking I could kind of get away from it all. And I'm still hearing him. And I say, and I'm just crying. Like, I almost don't know why I'm crying. And now I realize when I'm in his presence, I just weep. Like, as soon as his presence is around, I just totally cry. So I guess I'm a weeper. But so I said, I'm sorry I'm crying so much. And he just said, or I might have even said, why am I crying? And he said, some people cry when they find out. Some people, laugh because they just can't believe it. Some people are pretty matter of fact. He just kind of told me how different people take it. And I was just in absolute awe. And I then at that point realized the sheer volume of my sin too, which is why I think I was so scared. Yeah, it was really intense. So that was a huge absolute. He revealed himself to me. Like there were little things that led up to it, but I would not have totally believed that he was alive if he didn't talk to me. And that's how I know he loved me, so much that he actually knew I wouldn't get it until he talked to me. And it's a bummer that I just didn't understand before that. But I didn't have a lot of people around me who, like nobody really knew that, the girls had talked about they accepted the Lord, but they didn't talk about a ton of personal encounters they'd had with him. So, so after that, then I started to search into the Holy Spirit because I heard the Lord. And I started kind of researching, how did I know if I was filled with the Holy Spirit? I wanted to know, was I saved? Was I absolutely saved? And I found out, you had to be filled with the Holy Spirit. And as I kept hearing, the radio and this and that, and of course, God sends things that you need to know. I was hearing you had to be filled, you had to ask and be filled. And everything that I read in the Bible said people have to lay hands on you to be filled with the Holy Spirit. And, and I'm thinking, they're not talking about this in church. I'm not hearing this kind of stuff. Well, anyways, in my classroom, there was a para who, her daughter was going to become a minister in, and I forget what those denominations are that are pretty charismatic. Okay. So she was going to be a minister. And so then I asked her, I said, is she filled with the Holy Spirit? And she said, yeah, she is. And I said, are you filled with the Holy Spirit? Did she lay hands on you and you got filled with the Holy Spirit? She said, yeah, she did. And I had a class of kindergartners coming in, and I just said, will you hold my hands and let me pray the quickest prayer for me to be filled with the Holy Spirit? And she was totally fine with that. I held hands with her. I asked to be filled with the Holy Spirit. It was like being electrified. I had an absolute huge feeling through my body, like electricity, tingling. I absolutely knew I was filled with the Holy Spirit. No exceptions. And I absolutely knew I was saved. And that God loved me that much. So, more stories to come. I got to cut this one off. It's about like 12 minutes. Okay, thank you.